Welcome to the Well-Seasoned Librarian podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones. This is Season 14, Episode 15. Today I'm talking with Marisel Salazar, who is a food writer and TV host based in New York City. With a passion for diverse cuisines, she's written for top publications like the world-renowned Michelin Guide and Zagat Guide, and developed recipes for major food brands. Her expertise spans fine dining to street food, and she's interviewed everyone from celebrity chefs to everyday people. She also is the host of several TV shows and a documentary exploring the impact of COVID-19 on the restaurant industry. Marisel has a new cookbook out, Latinish, more than 100 recipes celebrating American Latino cuisines that will be out August 20. We have links in the bio to purchase this wonderful cookbook. You can pre-purchase it now as well. I have a great time talking with Marisel, and we chatted for half an hour before we got to the actual interview. I know you'll love this conversation, and I'll take you to it now. Welcome to the Well-Seasoned Librarian podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones, and today I'm speaking with cook, food reviewer, cookbook author, Marisel Salazar. Marisel, welcome to the podcast. I want to really say I really appreciate you being here. I can't wait to talk with you about your new cookbook, Latinish, out on August 20th. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, thank you, Dean, for having me. I am so stoked to chat with you all about American Latino gastronomies, and I cannot believe how quickly the cookbook launch date is coming up. It kind of just feels like, this is the baby that I'm giving birth to, and the due date is here.
I hear about that so much from authors who have cookbooks come out. They compare it to childbirth, and they say it's really amazing, and it's a lot of work. I just can't imagine it. You mentioned in your bio, I was reading up on you doing some research, that you had a whirlwind of cultural experiences growing up. You got to try a lot of different dishes in different areas like Hawaii, Japan, and South Korea that left great lasting impressions on you. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So I always say to people, I'm going to try to make this as concise as possible when they ask me where I'm from.
Yeah.
Because I'm from a lot of different places. I was born in Panama City, Panama, and then I left when I was around 3 or 4 years old, and my family and I moved to Hawaii. And we were on a military base out there in Honolulu on the island of Oahu. And we were there for about another 3 or 4 years. And at that time, when you're a kid, you don't really realize that your life is different from anybody else's because you just don't have that life experience to compare it to. So we became very accustomed to having some typical Hawaiian dishes like subi or poi, like poi, which is this like very dark gray kind of sticky tapioca, starchy dish. A lot of rice in everything. Spam, was a big one as well. And Hawaii was really interesting because it has a lot of Japanese, Chinese, Portuguese actually, and Puerto Rican influences. So when I was young, I even started noticing these types of different cultural fusions amongst dishes in Hawaii. And then after that, I moved to Japan. I lived on a tiny little island called Okinawa, Japan. So another very tropical environment. Again, another huge rice culture. Panama is also a very big rice country as well. And that's where I had some of on a daily basis. I'm a sushi lover now. I hated sushi as a kid. Did not like raw fish. I was more into like katsudon and udon noodles, Japanese curries, Okinawan sweet potatoes, seaweed, those types of things. And American food, real American food, was a really huge fascination for us because we would see all of these things that real Americans ate on TV. And we didn't have them. So getting our hands on Pop-Tarts and all the sugary cereals that we saw through the TV was a really big deal for us.
What made you decide to pursue a career in food? How did that start for you?
This is going to sound so cliche, Dean, but whatever. I will tell the story. Something like, oh my gosh. Please try again. Sorry, that was my phone just talking to me with the blue.
Okay. We can edit that out. That's fine.
So I decided to get into food when I was about 20 years old. And when I say get into food, I mean professionally, not just as someone who loves to eat and is a glutton or someone who likes to cook, but to truly make it a career. I was living in Madrid, Spain at that time, and that's where I really had this cultural and gastronomical renaissance. And I can pinpoint the exact moment that this happened. I was at a famous market called El Mercado de San Miguel, which is right near the center of the city, by Puerta del Sol, really close to the Plaza Mayor, really famous historical outdoor covered food market. And I was going around eating a bunch of different tapas, and I stopped to try an anchovy-filled olive. And when I bit into it, I had this ratatouille moment where explosions and fireworks went off in my head as soon as that, olive meat hit my tongue. And it was so umami and briny and salty and a little bit sour. And I felt it throughout my whole body. And I suppose I am being dramatic about it because it really was, a single bite of food can totally change the trajectory of your life. And it really did for me, but more so rather than just the flavor, I thought, who the heck thought to stick a fish in an olive? Like, what is the thinking behind this? And that sent me down my Alice in Wonderland, the rabbit hole. And I really wanted to know the reasoning behind the choices that were made to stick a fish in an olive. And from that moment on, I knew I wanted to write about and learn about people in food, the origins behind it, how history shaped it, how culture shapes and influences food, and also how it progresses from, hundreds of thousands of years ago to where we are now, and how it will continue to progress. And I took a very long-winded road to find my place in food. I never wanted to just do one thing. I was a cook. I was a chef's assistant, a professional recipe developer. I ran my own wholesale granola business. I'm a writer now. I'm a cookbook author. And to me, it was really important to have experience in all different facets of food in order to find my place, but also in order to speak to people and their experiences in food.
In your writings, you talked about delving into different cuisines and then talking about things like vegan cheese pairings to sushi. Can you talk of an example of a particularly unique or challenging food story you've tackled?
Yes. One of them was actually about the vegan cheese and wine pairings. Veganism, plant-based alternatives, dairy-free alternatives, really, really popular. I don't even want to say it's a trend because it is definitely going to stay as a part of our food systems and lifestyle. And with the onslaught of all the vegan cheeses that were out there on the market, I knew there was a very underserved audience that was probably, maybe formerly a wine and cheese lover that wished they could still pair their wine with cheese. And so I did a cheese tasting of like tens, almost like 100 different vegan cheeses with their respective wines to find which vegan cheeses paired best with wines. And that was truly like a very, very fascinating and eye-opening experiences because you have to undo everything you know about traditional cheese and take it from the POV of, okay, this is made with nuts. What kind of nuts? What are the flavor notes of the nuts? Are they raw? Are they toasted? Is it mixed with something else? So that was particularly challenging because I really had to start from scratch. And of course, with everything that I do, I also rely upon other experts, somms and cheesemongers, or vegan cheesemongers, as they now are called. So that was challenging and very fun for me to write.
Beyond written media, you also host a lot of on-camera segments. How does storytelling translate differently for you in these different mediums?
Oh my gosh, can I tell you what? I never wanted to be on camera. I never wanted to be on camera. I was so fine just hiding behind my byline. It's all I really needed in terms of visibility. My name, Marisel Salazar, attached to the article. But my editors at various different publications, when they were doing some digital on-camera segments, they asked if I wouldn't mind stepping in to be the on-camera talent or host. And I immediately said, no, I don't want to be on camera. I think I would be awkward or look funny through the lens. I was just very shy about the whole thing. And then And then they were like, well, you know what? We'll pay you a lot of money to do it. And you know what? I very much got over myself and I stepped in front of that camera because I had a job to do that I was getting paid. And then, Dean, I found out I loved it. And it wasn't just because, I mean, sometimes you really are just speaking to a black box and there's very little dialogue. But I like this in real time, one-to-one type of conversation and dialogue that I can have with someone where you can see their facial expressions, intimate what they're going to say next, or really get a vibe of how the conversation is going. And just like the written word, this is a different form of storytelling, but almost a little bit more emotive because you can hear my voice, you can hear their voice, intonations, pick up on facial cues. And I really just fell in love with it. And I'm not that shy, awkward person that I once was who was really scared to be in front of the camera.
You mentioned running a successful underground granola business earlier. What inspired you to create Granolita, and what did you learn from that experience?
Okay, so one of my many culinary experiences that I had trying to find my place in this world, I thought I was gonna, be the next granola queen. Like, I'm gonna be the next Purely Elizabeth and be on the shelf of Whole Foods and just have this granola empire. And I had always had my very special granola recipe that was really darn good. I'm not gonna lie. And the reason that I started this underground wholesale granola business was I was friends with this French Italian hotel owner here in New York City. And we were having coffee at his hotel, and he had mentioned to me that his mother had recently passed. And sometimes when I'm at a loss for words, the only thing that can step in is food to show some sort of empathy or appreciation for what they're going through. So the next time we visited for coffee, I gave him a jar of my granola, and he took a couple handfuls of it, popped it in his mouth, and he goes, "Ah, Marisel, this is like the caviar of granola. You must sell it to me." And I never really thought about that. It was always just a homemade recipe I made for my friends, family, and, some acquaintances. And I thought, you know what? This was my first client. I'll give it a shot. Let's see. If someone is so eager for me to sell them my granola, it must be pretty damn good. Let's see where this goes. I was baking granola 50 pounds a week out of my
Oh,
apartment.
wow. That's a lot.
It was a lot because it was wholesale and I had to sell
Oh my
by
God.
carting it down to Soho and Nolita to sell at various boutique hotels so they could offer it for their breakfast. And these folks were doing me a favor, like I was charging, I think, a whole dollar more than their competitors, but they wanted to give me a chance and they really loved my granola. And, after a time of doing this, it was truly just back-breaking work. I was very poor. I didn't have enough money to get a van or a car to actually drive it down there. And I was way too scared to take the subway. God forbid my bins or baskets fell, somebody stole it. So I would have to physically walk it and do my deliveries that way. I was making negative money. I did not pay myself. I still had a full-time job in a different industry at that point. And I realized this was not the way that I wanted to go into the wholesale, at least the way that I was doing it. I wasn't doing it very efficiently. I was just so flattered that somebody loved my food so much that they wanted to buy it, which I suppose in a sense is a very small fraction of why I wrote this cookbook. It's the smallest fraction, but there is a great form of flattery when people tell you they love your food. You just want to keep making it for them.
I love that story. I know, especially because New York, I started laughing when you started telling me, because I know that from what I've read, and especially from other cookbooks, people who cook, who are professionals, who need to cook in a New York kitchen can have a little bit of a problem because sometimes they're smaller with smaller ovens, and then you're like, kind of like, no, what have I got myself into?
It was tough. And I had looked into commercial kitchens, and the only hours for a commercial kitchen that I could afford at the time was between like 2 and 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shoot, I have a day job. When am I gonna sleep? Because
Yeah.
I would bake in between meetings and while I was working. Um, And it was great. I still, I did the whole branding. I got a website, packaging. And the reason it's called granolita was because, granolita, ita is the diminutive, a female diminutive of any word in Spanish. And I really liked how granolita had Nolita in it, which was one of the neighborhoods that I served in New York City.
I'd like to talk about your beautiful cookbook, Latinish. Can we talk about a little bit how your multicultural upbringing led you to explore this unique culinary space?
Yes. So I got the idea for the book, but I'd always kind of like doubled down like in these past, 5 years on my niche within food, which was not necessarily traditional Latin American, which I mean, a huge part of it is, but American Latino. I was always really into the American influence on Hispanic food and vice versa. And those are the types of recipes that I developed or redeveloped and wrote about. And I had this really vivid experience one day, and this is what inspired me to write the book. I was at a media event. We were having Tex-Mex food. I forget where it was, but everybody licked their plates clean. The food was delicious because Tex-Mex food is delicious. And all of these editors and other writers were complaining how, oh, this isn't traditional or authentic Mexican food, like as if it was lesser than. And I said to them a little dumbfoundedly, like, of course not. This is not traditional Mexican food. This is American food. And I was so surprised and appalled that they couldn't see the difference and that it was something that has existed. Tex-Mex has existed for hundreds of years, and it has a very rich history. Nobody talks about it in a way that they celebrate it. A lot of folks really put down this American Latino cuisine, whereas there are tons of folks from cities where these foods are extremely popular. San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, even here in New York, or the birthplace of some of our favorite foods. And I started recognizing that no one had ever talked about American Latino cuisine, uniting them, unifying all the different regions of the United States and their specific brand of American Latino cuisine. And I thought, I'm going to be the one to do it. I want to give American Latino gastronomy its well-deserved place in American food. And I want people to talk about it and recognize it and celebrate it and share their story of their own American Latino cuisine or what happened with their family and their experience with it. And it was also a reflection of myself. I'm a Latina immigrant. I have my American citizenship. I sound like this because I've grown up around Americans my whole life, grown up on military bases, which here's something that I like to say. I like to say that if New York City is a melting pot for all different kinds of cultures from around the world, then an American military base is a melting pot for every single kind of American from the 50 United States. And it truly is. I met so many different people, abroad, internationally. And every time we would go to someone's house or meet, they'd be like, this is a burrito from my state, or this is a taco from where I come from in the US. And I found that so fascinating because it was always presented to me as American food, which it is.
I remember, I'm a former service member, and I remember when I was on bases in Texas, we had a lot of international food. And a lot of people would kind of bring stuff from other countries with them or get stuff from home. And there was a lot of sharing of stuff. And there would be kind of little multicultural melting pots. I'm glad you brought that up. That's really wonderful.
Yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
I love a lot of the food that you have in the cookbook. I love the tamal pie. I love, trying to think, there was the puffy tacos.
Yeah, San Antonio puffy taco.
Yeah. And also there's the cream cheese and guava cinnamon rolls.
Yes. Oh my gosh, my favorite.
And just so many really great things. I really loved a lot of the different takes you had on things like Cuban pizza, Arkansas tamales. How did you approach these fusion recipes while staying true to the spirit of the original cuisine?
I think I don't even say it's staying true to the spirit of the original cuisine because they are exactly that. I'm always really careful with the word fusion The reason being is that I think in this day and age, fusion gets conflated with contrived or forcing something just to invent something out of thin air. I think, especially because food media, in the way that it is, people are always constantly trying to come up with a gimmick or something splashy and newsworthy for a couple clicks, views to make it on television. And it really actually has no organic history or cultural relevance in it at all. And you know what? That can also be okay. Sometimes there's nothing wrong with that. We can have some really beautiful, delicious dishes made out of let's just create something wild. But I think fusion gets a bad rap because it's seen as creating something inauthentic,
Yeah.
and contrived. And whereas staying true to the spirit of these recipes, yes, in the technical sense of the word, it is a fusion of two cultures that have come together to create something very unique and singular. And the way that I stay true to it is by telling the history. You will find in every single one of my recipes an extensive, but not too extensive, don't worry, it's very digestible, but a head note that goes into the research and the history of how this particular food or dish came to be. One really fun one is the origins of chimichangas. Where did a name like chimichanga come from? And there's different origin stories to all of these. It's, oh, someone dropped a burrito accidentally in a deep fryer, and instead of saying a Mexican palabrota, like a expletive, instead of saying a Mexican expletive, which I don't think I can say on this podcast just in case, instead of saying that, they fudged it a little bit, like chimichanga instead of like um and I go into the stories and the histories around these different types of food, which is why I think rather than fusion, it's just explaining the history of it. And I think by explaining the history and origin of a dish, that's how you stay true to it. And that's how you are almost given I don't want to say permission, but you're given the opportunity by honoring its roots to develop and play around with it further because you have an understanding of where it came from.
You have a nice combination of stuff in here. There was a lot of things I really want to try just because I think I could see myself incorporating this into my cooking repertoire. Like the collard greens empanadas seem like a real wonderful no-brainer that would be really great to serve to guests. The breakfast tacos I could see eating every day.
Yeah.
But for serving to people, kind of a fancy, the guava pistachio baked brie would be wonderful to bring to a potluck or to serve to people. And then
Yes.
for the frittados pies, I could see that eating that once a week. So there's kind of a different level of things. Like some are really fancy, but you had a lot of fun. I think I see the fun first and foremost in this. Am I off base in saying that?
No, you're right on the money. I didn't want this to necessarily be a fancy cookbook. I wanted it to be approachable and fun because I kind of think about it like picking somebody up at a bar. When you're interested in someone, what are the things that you look for, like in their body cues, to see if they are fun, if they're attractive, if they are approachable is the main thing. And I wanted these recipes to be approachable because I think one of the biggest heartaches of any type of cookbook is you feel too intimidated to try to make the dish because you feel like you're not at some level of skill that you should be. And this cookbook is for home cooks. It was made with them in mind. When I did the cross-testing and development, it was through the lens of not necessarily a restaurant chef. I'm sure if you're a restaurant chef, you can, of course, do this. But it was made for folks like you and I and everyday cooking and nothing too overly complicated or, you have to age it 45 days or, caramelize the onions for half of your life. I mean, you could do that if you wanted to, but I want people to eat. I want people to eat from the cookbook, not just, it's a pretty cookbook. You could, just flip through the pages of the photos. They're beautiful. My photographer, Hip Torres, did an incredible job, as did my food stylist, Cesar Andrete. But it is approachable. There are recipes that you could do for any type of level. I love the baked brie and croûte because that does sound fancy. I'm sorry, and it's baked guava jam brie and croûte. because it's fancy, but it's so darn easy to put together. However, that isn't to say that American Latino gastronomy cannot be fine. It is fine, particularly if you look into the Alta California cuisine. Alta California, that entire movement is about elevating American Latino cuisine. And there is a really wonderful group of chefs out in California who are really taking this to the next level, having uni tacos, really diverse and like complex mole fry flavors with like beautiful moles, having duck tacos. It's a really gorgeous movement. And from what I pull from Alta California cuisine are something, pared down recipes for the home cook. But I never wanted to say, and I have a movement that I want Hispanic food to never just be thought of as cheap food, and especially it's American food. It's our food too. American Hispanic food. It shouldn't be seen as cheap. And that's something really important to me.
Yeah, I recently had food in a restaurant that served mainly tacos, and the tacos were served with a lot of panache, and they were all there. You got to choose different types, but they had a salsa sommelier that would recommend different salsas with different, and then they had like microgreens on top. Everything was produced with the utmost of care, and the chef even came out and would talk to you and tell you what their thoughts were behind the food. And I was seeing this care put into it and the respect that it deserves, and it's thrilling to me to kind of be alive at this time and kind of seeing this happen. How do you feel about this?
I love it. I mean, there are a lot of restaurants now that are making their own masa in-house for their tacos and for their tostadas and infladas, gorditas, whatever, using heirloom corn, using these wonderful, wonderful corns sent from Mexico, and they're milled in-house, they're nixtamalized in-house, rolled. Sobre Masa here in New York City does an excellent job of that. They have their own tortilla making process in-house, as well as a couple of other spots here as well. So I think it's also paying finer attention to the origins of the ingredients, some of them sourced from Mexico, but also paying attention to the origins of the ingredients from the United States. We can have some fine ingredients come here from the US. It's not all soy and corn and GMO, as we love to hate ourselves. There's a lot of really wonderful ingredients that are American grown and made, like cheeses from Wisconsin, which are a pivotal part of a lot of American Latino dishes. You couldn't necessarily get the native ingredients from Mexico, and a lot of folks would use what was available to them, which was American made.
I really want to talk about the photography for the cookbook. It's really well done. No surprise though here, because the publisher, Countryman Press, always does really good jobs with the cookbooks. I'm really always in love with anything they do. Did you have how much input did you have? Like because the food photography is exceptional, and it really also makes the food look inviting and make you want to eat it, which is not always happening in cookbooks sometimes. So I was really impressed by that part of it, and how something like the frittata pie was really inviting looking. How much input did you have on that with the cookbook?
100%. But I always sought outside guidance, of course, with these decisions. I chose the photographer, I chose the food stylist, I chose my prop stylist. I mean, not even chose, I found them, because I really wanted to, as much as I could, have my team be representative of the book, Hispanic American. And my photographer, Hipólito Torres, Hip Torres, he does incredible photography, product photography. He has done food photography, but this was the first cookbook that he ever shot. And when we spoke, we had multiple conversations. There was also just this feeling. It wasn't, I wanted to give him a chance because I knew he would do an incredible job. And there was this thing in me that told me, it's like, this is the photographer for you. Sure, he might have never shot a cookbook, but I know he's going to do an amazing job. He's a Dominican American guy, and I just, I have a lot of Dominican American recipes in the book, so I also wanted that represented on my team. Same thing with my food stylist. A huge part of cookbook photography is the food stylist. This man, what a wizard. The tools that he had in his kit to make things look like they do in the cookbook. And a huge part of cookbook photos and styling comes from the props, all of these things that you would normally never think about. Background surfaces, the vessels that the food is on, the plate, the utensils, a napkin. And so my prop stylist was really pivotal to do that. His name is Sean Dooley, and he does excellent prop styling. So I knew I needed the people who could do what they did well, and I had to articulate my vision as clearly as I could to make what I had in my mind come alive on that shoot. So I was all up in there. I was like, let's move this 2 degrees to the left. And I have this vision of this swooping down here and the smoke over here. And they were able to take my direction and make it come to life. I was the director of the photo shoot. And I had to really give huge props also to my prep kitchen assistants. They were absolutely amazing. Carolina Zapata, Madeline Musi, and our production assistant, Lemon. They were amazing. And I really couldn't have done this without them. And my publisher as well, my editor, James Jayo, just brought in a wealth of knowledge as well. So it takes a village to shoot a cookbook. We did this 2 weeks, dead on our feet every day, but so excited to come to set to see what beauty we could make.
How did you feel when you had it in your hands, the first prep, the first copies that came out?
I gotta tell you something a little unromantic. So, okay, from what everybody sees on social media about, first-time cookbook authors unboxing their book from the publisher and seeing it in their hands, and it's very weepy and it's very emotional. I thought that was going to happen to me, but I have not physically cried in like 2 years. I'm just a very dehydrated person, I think. But I think I've been so close to it. It was no great surprise. Like, it's not like I wasn't there every single day for hours on end at my own cookbook photo shoot. I knew what everything was going to look like. And I knew how it would all come out. So when I got it, I was deeply appreciative of my team. Like, we got to this point. Now it is up to me to do us justice, promote this book, to sell this book and get it in as many hands as possible. Because I think the true moment for me will be the reaction on other people's faces when they see it. Not me seeing it because I've already been so close to it. It's somebody else seeing it.
I love that. Marisel, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. I've loved getting a chance to talk to you about your book. And I want to remind people it's going to be out on August 20th. We're going to have links in the bio so you can pre-purchase it at a time. And it'll be available in all better bookstores. Marisel, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. It's been a treat talking to you.
Thank you so much, Dean. This was really fun.
That was my conversation with the wonderful Marisel Salazar. Her new cookbook, Latinish, will be out on August 20th, but you can pre-purchase it now through the link in the bio. You won't want to miss this magnificent work celebrating American Latino cuisine. We will also have links to Marisel's website and social media links. Next week, we'll be speaking to a representative from the Tony's Chocolonely Company. You won't want to miss this conversation on everything chocolate. That's all the time we have for now. Until next week, I'll see you at the library.